Hey, you know what else looks visually shoddy? We had no questions last time. So I'm going to talk about the Deus Ex Remaster. Oh boy! So a few days ago at, I believe, the PlayStation State of Play, there was a remaster of Deus Ex announced. And I saw that and I went, whoa, that sounds awesome. I love Deus Ex. That's like one of the best games of all time. A remaster is perfect, because if you want to play Deus Ex nowadays, you can buy it for very cheap. It's like $6 on Steam right now, on sale. But really, if you want to play it, you kind of got to play it modded just to bring. I would recommend. So like when my friend Prox streamed Deus Ex, I recommended him to use the same mod that I did, which is I believe it's called the Community Update mod, which mainly it has no real gameplay changes. I think there's optional gameplay changes, but by default it is just quality of life features, such as bringing the game up to modern support for modern aspect ratios, some more graphics options and stuff like that, and bug fixes, namely fixes to bugs in dialogue sequences, which are very, kind of important to Deus Ex, a game with phenomenal writing. And it's not that hard to get the whole thing set up, but it is a hurdle, And in my mind, it's really nice, just the idea to get a version of Deus Ex that is just a altogether complete package that just takes that one layer of work out of it, because some people just don't want to deal with that. You might think that's silly. I think it's a little silly, but at the same time, I also understand that I'm a bit of a freak. So immediately I was really happy with that, just based on title alone and assuming that that's what that was going to be. And then I watched the trailer and I went, oh, okay. So that's how they're remastering it. So when you hear the words Deus Ex Remastered, the other name you want to hear along with it is Night Dive. And, we're actually going to talk about Night Dive in a second. They're kind of the best in the business at the moment in terms of porting old games, specifically old PC games, and really doing them a lot of justice, putting a lot of care into the product, and making really, I don't know, the Criterion Collection tier, Blu-ray release, tier of for old games. Well, Night Dive is not attached to this project. It's Aspyr. Aspyr, who you might know from being the ones to do the recent Tomb Raider 1 through 3 remaster, which I heard generally good, okay things about. Also, that remaster of Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront 2, I believe, that was so bad that I think it was one of those cases where it was so bad that it got the player numbers to spike on the original version. They fucked that thing up. They have also been working on a remaster / what is it? Hang on, Aspyr KOTOR. They've been working on a supposed remake of Knights of the Old Republic, which that thing is vaporware. That thing is not coming out. I don't think anyone believes that that's coming out. So they've got a bit of a shoddy history. But they are, I guess, kind of buddy with IDOS, as you might surmise. I'm imagining that the relationship is I believe the relationship is between them and IDOS, which you might surmise from the Tomb Raider remaster collection. So they got them to do a Deus Ex Remaster, and it feels like legitimately Silent Hill HD Collection tier, which is on a purely objective level. Yes, the game technically looks better. Big emphasis on technically, and I mean technically very literally. So if you watch the trailer, essentially what they've done is create a ton of new, retexture the entire game with new high quality textures. And actually, you know, there were some people calling this lazy looking. Maybe to some extent. I would say more careless than lazy. Because if you pay attention to the screenshots and stuff and the footage, they actually went through the trouble of creating new normal maps to match the new textures. The normal maps being, if you're not familiar, it's like an extra graphical layer on top of the texture that basically tells the game's lighting engine how to light a certain visual part of the game. That's how it's like a visual trick. That's how a lot of depth is depth and wear and detail is implied on tons of textures in games that you've played. If you've ever played a game where you're walking on, say, a cobblestone street and it looks like it has real depth, and you can see the cracks in the grouting between the cobblestones, but then you move the camera down to be more level with the ground, and you notice that it's actually just a completely flat plane, and you're like, that looks weird. And then you kind of like tip it forward and backwards to see suddenly, now it looks like it has depth, but then I make it more level and it doesn't. Really weird. It's just a flat plane. That's because of normal maps. It is just a flat plane, but there is extra lighting information that's like in the shape of all of that little detail and stuff to give the illusion, I don't know if exactly the illusion, it's the illusion of depth without actually having to model depth, which would be a lot more like graphically intensive to act. It requires way more hand done like topography and stuff like that, and probably makes the game run worse. It's just honestly easier and more efficient to do normal maps and stuff like that. So they've actually gone in and created new normals for this stuff, for all the new high resolution textures. Like you can see it on the footage of the Liberty Island mission at the beginning of the game, where the tiles on the ground now have this new high res texture, and the lighting actually kind of more realistically bounces off of the, bounces and reflects and casts shadows on the little spaces in between the tiles and stuff. And this is all over the game. They've actually put in a fair amount of work, it seems. I don't know if you can just AI generate that stuff nowadays, but it seems like they've actually put in the work to do that. The problem, I think a lot of people have been focusing on the textures and stuff and saying that that's the problem with the way the game looks. And I think that's actually a misattribution. I think it's what is a prognosis? Which one is that? Prognosis. The likely course of a disease or ailment. A forecast of the... okay. It's like a prediction. I thought a prognosis is when your gnosis goes 7 minutes long and has 5 different genres that it flips through. It's a misdiagnosis of the issue, in my opinion. Like, at first, I agreed with the memes, the sentiment about it looks like an HD Minecraft texture pack, like realistic cow texture image. I think there's a similar thing actually going on there. Actually, no, wait, hang on. That is kind of a good comparison. The problem is not the texture. The textures look great. The problem is where the textures are placed. There's the two things. Number one is that it appears that none of the actual topography of the environment has been changed. There are new character models that are higher fidelity, although those have different problems. But none of the actual environments have changed in terms of poly count or, topography at all. Which means that you are taking much higher resolution textures and just slapping them on like cardboard boxes. And it just inherently looks a little anachronistic. It looks like Minecraft HD cow. The other big problem is the lighting. The lighting is the real culprit here. The new lighting engine, I'm assuming that's what's going on, is that it's some kind of new engine. So you have to understand that when Deus Ex came out in 2000, it was not considered a good-looking game. That's kind of lost on us now because we just see an old game and every old game kind of looks like, oh yeah, you don't expect it to look that good. So nowadays, I think it's actually aged fine because it's not like super duper ugly. And it's, the effect is really diminished. At the time, it was like, this looks like a game from 1997. This looks like Quake 2. This looks like Unreal. Okay, maybe not that. Unreal 2. Deus Ex was never considered a great looking game. It survived based on the strength of its gameplay and its story. But what this has really made me appreciate was the original game's art direction. When you look at... There's a great post by Wario64 that just grabs a bunch of... I think it's probably from a website or something. It looks like it's from the official website. But I'm just looking at the Wario64 Blue Sky post where they are just dropping the side-by-side screenshot comparisons. And there's this one, like the very first one is the perfect illustration. I will link this thread below if you're curious. It's just a scene of one of the big walker mechs standing in a courtyard with a building behind it with some lights on it. And in the original screenshot, it's dark. It is really dark. In fact, the ground is entirely covered in shadow, save for where in the background there are a couple of floodlights explicitly shining down on them. And even that light, it might be the texture or the color of the light itself or some mix of the two. That light is this odd, like, at least from my, maybe it looks a little different if you're not seeing it through a super intense blue light filter, but it's got this kind of weird, like, bluish green hue to it. Like, it looks a little otherworldly and a little eerie, you know? And you're like, the one thing I got from this screenshot is, man, this game is dark. And that's perfect. And because Deus Ex is thematically and literally about shadows. It's about shadowy secret organizations pulling the strings behind the scenes. It's about delving into mysteries. The gameplay has tons of stealth elements where you are quite literally hiding from enemies. So much thematically and gameplay-wise this is one of the reasons Deus Ex is so cool, is how, like, every part of the game, like, synergizes with each other. Like, everything kind of reinforces. It's such a holistic feeling game, from the game, like the gameplay and the story, and even looking at it now, the visuals all mesh together. That's one of the reasons it creates such a strong impression, is that, like, the gameplay, the story, and the every element of it is really focused on immersing you in the ideas that it wants to explore. And it's a really striking scene, this original this original screenshot. There's an intense atmosphere. There's these lights on the top of the building behind it, and they're not very powerful. They only kind of illuminate the area right around them, and then they just vanish. It just everything else is swallowed up by darkness. In the remake, completely blown out. Everything is brighter. Those lights in the background, now they're just casting across like half the rooftop. The ground, which in the original is just like absolutely consumed by shadow, bright, almost fully illuminated. Those spotlights that cast this eerie glow in the background of the underneath of this building, of like whatever this awning is, barely contrasts at all. The eye just wanders wherever. There's nothing to really grab your attention here. It's funny, like even in this one random screenshot of an area from the original game, there is like a strong visual language, and your eye is drawn to certain, like the big red stripe on the visor of the walker is really attention grabbing because it's so bright, in contrast to how dark everything around it is. It's almost like the game uses light and shadow to kind of signal the player about stuff. It's almost like, oh, hey, you should look at this giant, deadly, dangerous mech. It has a big, bright red, contrasty visor. And every single screenshot is like this. Just everything is completely blown out. Why is everything so bright? Why is everything so bright? All of the lights are so powerful. They're not only brighter at their like epicenter, they also have such a long reach. They emanate so far, and it completely destroys any atmosphere. They have a side-by-side of the main character, J.C. Denton, in the original and the remake. And I don't usually use the terminology like this that what the kids do. But the only words that I could think of to describe this is total aura obliteration. That's all I could think of. And I was left wondering, why does he look so much less cool? Why does he look so much less cool in the remaster? And again, as before, he's so fucking bright. Like, that whole thing I was just talking about with the idea of emerging, like dipping into and out of the shadows. JC's face, in addition to just the natural shading on him that's created by the game's lighting engine in the original, he also literally has shadows textured into his face. Like the back of his face, the back of it, you can hardly tell where his like slicked back black hair begins and where the shadow begins. His face just kind of like appears, this highly contrasty pale face out of the shadows. It looks like he is literally melting into the darkness at all times. Deus Ex is a game that takes place almost entirely at night. In fact, that shit is getting real when you play a mission where like the sun is starting to come up in the very far distance. You can just see like the very beginning of the sunrise, and you're like, oh shit, this feels like near the end of the game. And that's like the third to last mission or something. And in the remake, he's so bright. For some reason, his jacket is much more, because instead of like the dark black, almost navy, if anything, maybe navy blue, that's like the brightest you could even call it. In the remaster, it's like brown. There's so much light on it. It looks brown. There is this like some red lights shining on him from the side that makes him even brighter. And he doesn't look like he's like the shadows on his face. I can tell exactly like, I can see exactly where his hair is. The shadows on his face are so much subtler, and there's so much more of his skin tone instead of these really powerful, intense, contrasty shadows. All gone. Also, for some reason, and I don't know if this is just in this screenshot and maybe in the actual remaster it looks correct, but his eyes don't glow. What? His eyes are not glowing. His pupils don't glow. In the original, like, JC is a cyborg and he has cybernetically enhanced vision. He has the popular line, "My vision is augmented," that he says whenever anyone asks him about his glowy eyes, because his pupils have this bright green glow to them. And you can see it even behind his sunglasses. It's like a cool visual for his character that it allows him to wear, like, that's literally the explanation for why he wears sunglasses at night, is because it doesn't matter, because his eyes can see just fine through them. Because his vision is augmented. In the remaster, you can't see his glowy eyes. You cannot see his glowy eyes. I don't know why. It's one of the most memed on lines in the original game. My vision is augmented. The official Deus Ex subreddit, the tag for the subreddit is "Our vision is augmented." That's the official sub. His vision is not augmented in the remaster. What the hell? What is going on here? Oh, good lord. Some of the other character models just look really off. The next screenshot is the leader of the, I don't know. There's a million acronyms for different groups in this game. The leader of the terrorist organization from the beginning of the game, who you meet at the top of the Statue of Liberty. Again, in the original, almost completely in the shadow. Like, everything is black except for his character model. He is also black, but as he's like an African American. But the world around him is totally shadowy. Which, again, is kind of a cool visual. He's like in this world of darkness. Whoa, vampire? And in the remaster, what else? Of course, completely blown out, super bright. But also a bunch of weird stuff going on. Like, okay, for some reason, he's super shiny. And not just his, like, tech shirt or whatever he's wearing, which was sort of just, its materials were kind of implied in the original. Now it's, like, very explicitly sculpted. He has, like breastplates. They're super shiny, which, again, it looks very bright. For, like, the highlights are so bright. For some reason, his head, it's like he's been applying baby oil to his face, because his head and his face are super shiny. Really odd. A lot of things in the game have this overly shiny material for some reason. And again, I don't think the actual, like, polygon count has been updated for most of these, or if it has, there's not enough, like, it's not enough detail. Like, oh god, there's this really bad screenshot. Let me find it. It's it's in one of the offices. I think it's in, is this from France? I don't remember where this is in the game. But it's JC is holding, it's when he's holding a crowbar and looking at the back of a guard's head wearing a helmet. And the helmet is so shiny. There is, like, no amount of realistic wear on it. It's just a shiny, I can see someone opening it in Blender and messing with the material and being like, yeah, it's, like, shiny, but it's got a little, like, rough, diffusion on it. And it's so bad looking. It's so outdated. It looks like a Gmod thing from 2012 that an amateur would put together, not a professional company putting out a professional product. This is also a great screenshot to get a sense for the weird differences, like the weird mismatch between the textures and the proportions of everything in the world. Like, man, that door is huge. The ceiling is super high. The desk is super. There's a ton of space in this room for no reason. The tiles are gigantic on the floor. Stuff that you wouldn't really notice in the original. Partially probably just because of how much darker I'm imagining it is. But also because, yeah, everything just looks a little crummier in general. One of the benefits of the original is that it had this very simple lighting engine, a very basic lighting engine for the time, but they didn't really have access to these elaborate normal maps. That was a lot harder to do. So much of the detail was actually painted in the textures. And so it has it creates an aesthetic where you can understand like what the artists were going for. And once you get into it looks, everything kind of flows together visually, where you're like, okay, yeah, there's like, man, it's so weird. It feels like there's more detail on the old models just because I can see the literal, like, where they painted in the rust on the mech's limbs and stuff like that, where they painted in the scratches, in the textures, and the wear on the emblem on its front. And in the remaster, a lot of that stuff is supposedly being handled by, like, normal map stuff, and it just doesn't look as striking. It's not detailed enough to make up for it. Just a total, obliteration. A total obliteration of the original game's art style. Now, Tomb Raider, I believe, also had these... graphical updates, but I have heard that you can turn them off and play with the original graphics. And hopefully that's an option here. There was some article that was like, do we really need a Deus Ex Remaster? And I would say in some regards no, but in others it's appreciated. And the reason I say that is mainly because of accessibility. One is, okay, I'm hoping to God this at least has some bug fixes. Like, please tell me that there's some bug fixes in this. And it's got to support modern aspect ratios and stuff like that. I'm hoping. But really accessibility in the sense that there's going to be a console port. Like, you're going to be able to play Deus Ex on a Switch. And that's kind of crazy. Now, Deus Ex is technically available on PSN. And maybe Game Pass, I'm not sure. But it's not it's not really ideal. It's the PlayStation, the PS2 port of Deus Ex, which was called The Conspiracy. The big problem with the PS2 port is I believe it's mostly faithful to the original. Like, it follows the same plot and all that, but the limitations of the PS2 disk space meant that a lot of that game had to get crunched down. There's a lot more loading screens. I don't think it looks that much worse. But there's definitely a lot more performance issues and compromises for the sake of fitting it onto a disc. I think that some areas are also redone to make them... Oh yeah, the maps are much smaller. Which, I mean, part of that's a real drag on the Deus Ex experience, in my opinion. So getting an honest to god version of real original Deus Ex playable on consoles, and more consoles than ever before, is a good thing in my book. If as long as the graphical update is optional, it feels like a big wasted effort and a very careless interpretation of the original game's art style, which bums me out. And I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's a rush job or if it was just mismanaged or something. Maybe it was all the above. But yeah. I'll settle for it, but I'm not that happy about it. If you have not played Deus Ex and you don't have access to, honestly, even a really rudimentary laptop these days can run Deus Ex on Steam. If all you've got is, for a gaming device, is a console, play this fucking game. Play this game and turn those remastered graphics off. It's one of the best games of all time. Incredibly interesting. If you just allow yourself to immerse yourself in the world and the vibe, and it's one of those, it's an immersive sim, so it's the type of game where the more you put into it, the more you get out. So just experimenting and messing around with what's possible in every situation and how you can manipulate NPC behaviors and stuff like that, and how all the different augments and stuff work. Explore a ton, try to find different ways to finish missions. One of the coolest games ever made. You gotta play it.